You know how you can follow all the traditional money advice? You save more, you invest early, you work your tail off, and you still feel like you're just not getting ahead? Well, it turns out that's because money doesn't really follow rules, it follows laws. And once you understand them, the entire game changes.
Yeah, this feeling. This is why we have to look past all that surface level advice. It's a huge red flag that we're playing a game, but we don't actually know the real rules, the laws that actually determine who wins.
All right, so let's get into it. Here's our game plan. We're going to break down the 7 fundamental laws of money, and then we're going to wrap it all up with a simple, powerful checklist you can use for pretty much any investment decision you ever make again. Okay, let's kick things off with the first and, honestly, the most fundamental law. It all boils down to this one question everyone wrestles with. Should I move fast or should I be patient? And understanding this is the key difference between just making money and building real, lasting wealth. So here's how this plays out in the real world. I knew this real estate investor who got into flipping houses. For 5 solid years, his whole life was about speed. Buy, fix, sell, repeat. The guy did 100 deals. Now, at the same time, his friend bought one property, then a small apartment building, then a bigger one. He only did 3 deals. After 5 years, the flipper had some cash, sure, but the friend who let time and compounding do the heavy lifting, his net worth was 5 times bigger. Money is made fast, but wealth is built slow. And you want to see the ultimate example of this? Just look at Warren Buffett. From 1965 to 2024, Berkshire Hathaway compounded at almost 20% a year. That's double what the S&P 500 did. The total return? An absolutely mind-bending 5 million%. He didn't do that with speed. He did it by making good decisions and then giving them decades to grow. Time was his secret weapon. Okay, so if time is the what, the next obvious question is who. Who actually controls the outcome in this game? And this brings us to the playbook used by the most powerful people out there. And it all comes down to 2 things: power and leverage. Think about any financial deal. Doesn't matter if it's buying a company or just buying a house. There's always an unfair advantage. And it almost always belongs to the person writing the check. The buyers and the builders, they have the power because they're the ones unlocking value. And more importantly, they get to set the terms of the deal. And this chart just lays it all out, crystal clear. Look at the Forbes 400 list of the wealthiest people. How many of them got there by earning a salary? A big fat 0. A few made it by selling a company they built. But the vast majority, they are the buyers and the builders. People like Musk, Bezos, Buffett, they are constantly acquiring and growing assets. They are the ones giving the money, and that's where the power is. So how in the world do these people make such massive moves? Well, they use the most misunderstood tool in all of finance: leverage. Now, I want you to stop thinking of it as just debt. A better way to think about leverage is as a magnifier. It takes whatever you put in and multiplies the output. And that works for both your wins and your losses. Let's make this super simple. Let's say you buy a house for $1 million, all cash. The value goes up by 10%, so you've made 100 grand. Your return on your cash is 10%. Straightforward enough, right? But now, watch what happens when we sprinkle in a little leverage. You buy the exact same house for the exact same price, but this time you only put down $200,000 of your own money, and you get a loan for the other $800,000. The house still goes up by 100 grand, but because you only put in 200 grand of your own cash, your return is now 50%. That is leverage in action, multiplying your outcome. All right, so we've got time as our partner and leverage as our tool. Now let's see how these come together to actually build and scale wealth. Think of it like a car. You need an engine just to keep you moving down the road, but you also need an accelerator to really get you to freedom. So law number 4 is that cash flow keeps you alive, but equity is what makes you free. Think about McDonald's for a second. We all think they're in the burger and fries business, right? That's their cash flow. It pays the bills. But their real wealth, their equity, it comes from owning almost $45 billion in real estate and from collecting billions more in franchise fees. The cash flow keeps the lights on. The equity is what builds the empire. This brings us to law number 5, and this one is a real game changer. Risk and reward are non-linear. This flips everything you thought you knew about risk on its head. You're looking for what they call asymmetric bets, opportunities where you can risk a small fixed amount of money for a potentially massive outsized return. In other words, you know exactly how much you can lose, but you have no idea how much you can win. Like, take a venture capital fund. They might put 100 grand into 5 different startups. Their maximum loss is capped at $500,000. 4 of those companies could completely fail, but if just one of them becomes 100 times winner, that single hit pays for all the losses and then some. That's the power of nonlinear risk. Your downside is capped, but your upside is absolutely explosive. Building wealth is exciting, but all the gains in the world don't mean a thing if you can't hang on to them. The most important part of this whole game is just staying in the game. And that brings us to our last 2 laws, the laws of protection. This might be the most important law of all. It's not about finding that one huge score that sets you up for life. It's about sizing your bets so that you can never be completely wiped out. You have to protect the machine, your capital that produces the opportunities in the first place.
So let me tell you a quick, painful story. A friend and his wife, they'd spent 15 years saving up over $700,000. They got introduced to this oil and gas deal that, on paper, looked like a total no-brainer. Great returns, amazing tax advantages, the whole shebang.
He put his entire life savings into that one deal. 2 years later, it collapsed, and everything was gone. The lesson here isn't whether the deal was good or bad. Who cares? The lesson is about the bet size. He risked his entire empire on a single roll of the dice, and he lost. And that leads us perfectly into our final law, which clarifies probably the most misused piece of advice in finance. Law number 7 says, diversification is a hedge against ignorance. This simple little chart tells you exactly what to do. You only concentrate your bets, put all your eggs in one basket, when you both understand the risk and you have control, like Elon Musk with Tesla. But what if you have no control and you don't really understand the risks? That's when you diversify broadly, like in an index fund. Simple as that. So these 7 laws, they're like the new operating system for your financial life. But knowing them is one thing. How do you actually apply them? Well, let's boil everything we've talked about down into a simple, actionable checklist you can use for any opportunity that comes your way. From now on, before you put a single dollar into anything, just run it through these 5 questions. First, can this thing actually compound over time? Tapping into law number 1. Second, who's really in control here? Is it you or someone else? Third, what is my absolute worst case scenario if this thing fails? Am I risking the empire? Fourth, is the potential upside truly meaningful? Is it nonlinear? And finally, do I genuinely understand the risks here, or am I just kind of hoping it all works out? This is your new filter. Look, understanding these laws is like being handed the official playbook after years of just guessing the rules on your own. So the real question isn't just about what you've learned today, it's about what you're going to do with it. The game of money is absolutely winnable, but only when you stop following the old rules and start mastering the laws.